Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great week out there so far. Here to bring you the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Thursday. The big topic in this morning's video is going to be significant severe weather that's going to impact areas of the Midwest, from the plains of the Midwest all the way to portions of like the lower Great Lakes region. So we're going to break this down. Higher populated areas are under the gun today. Chicago, maybe even St. Louis, Kansas City, maybe even all the way to Detroit. You guys, Milwaukee, earlier in the day, probably early this afternoon. Maybe you guys got some weather moving in right now. But anyways, higher populated areas, and I do think it's just better ingredients today, especially thermodynamic-wise. So we're going to get very detailed on that, talk about the latest outlook. Just note that some of this could change. It could broaden, it could shrink. The outlook category could go up another category, it could drop a category. So I just want to kind of throw that out there for you folks, but we'll take a look at some of the short range model guidance and the ingredients driving this. After we get done doing all that, we'll break down updated information on the tropics. The tropics is very slowly but steadily heating up out there, so we need to try to figure that out. We're going to continue to pump out updates every single day on the tropics, so if you're only interested in that, definitely take advantage of those timestamps. They're there to help you folks. And yeah, we'll get everybody else covered too. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below so I can do that and so others have an opportunity to do so too. So let's get rocking and rolling. So what's going on out there right now? Well, there's a frontal boundary sagging south, a lot of moist, warm morning air to kickstart your Thursday morning out here across the Midwest. But we got some rain moving across areas of Canada. We got an area like just an area of energy kind of surging on both sides of Lake Michigan right now. We got a lot of tropical moisture dancing around down here in the southeast. A lot of moisture off the coast of the Carolinas, but most of it is off the coast of the Carolinas. But this is definitely affecting South Florida, and I do think we're going to have an even more of a significant flooding threat for today. In fact, there's a moderate risk. We'll talk about that here in a second per the excessive rain outlook. But then we got some storms rumbling through South Dakota. Speaking of South Dakota, I want to give a shout out to Swan and Susan that lives in central South Dakota. You guys sent me a very sweet message on Facebook yesterday. I just had time to read it this morning, just talking about how you and your family watch me every single day, every single video. And there's a lot of people who do that. So I just want to say thank y'all, appreciation for not only you guys but everybody out there who does it. But I do want to give a shout out to you all. Every time y'all send me a very nice, kind comments like that, I can't explain it. It gives me the fire, the motivation to keep up with this. And because sometimes, I'm a human, guys. I'm not a robot. You get tired pumping out videos every day, and sometimes it's like, man, I really just don't feel like doing a video this morning. But you're so in the routine of things, and it means so much to you just to do it anyways. But anyways, shout out to you all. Y'all are dealing with a little bit of weather this morning. Not sure if it's falling at your particular location, but there's definitely some showers and storms in the state of South Dakota this morning. A little bit of a flow coming up. Some people were asking from last night's video, what was that spin off the coast of California? That's that cutoff low that we keep mentioning, and just looks like a cinnamon roll swirl. Speaking of cinnamon rolls, I'd love to have a cinnamon roll right now. I have not had one in quite some time. But anyways, watches, warnings, and advisories. Heat advisories up for Topeka, Kansas, Kansas City, sections of Missouri, a couple counties in Iowa, several counties in southeast Nebraska, and a whole lot of counties in Kansas. Folks, it'll get downright miserably hot in this area today. High humidity, temperatures potentially getting over 100 degrees. It'll feel like storms coming. But heat advisories in the orange across the southwest, southern high plains, excessive heat warnings across this area too, just very hot conditions. And then we got the flood watches down here from just south of Tampa all the way down to Miami, southern areas of Florida, where we continue just to get, just the same old thing, just flooding rains, tropical moisture, and all that stuff. Speaking of, flooding rains and a lot of rain, flooding, there is a moderate risk now up for the southern tip of Florida, southern sections of Florida. That means there's at least a 40% chance of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles in a given point. The yellow area just above that, it's a slight risk, 15% risk. And if you're wondering what the green areas is, that's a 5% risk of flash flooding to occur. So, Storm Prediction Center outlook. We'll take a broad look at this first. I do want to note there's a risk of severe weather from Marquette, Lower Michigan, all the way back to Cheyenne. all the way over to eastern Colorado, all the way to Amarillo, the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. But the epicenter of the worst weather today will be in this area from Kansas all the way to lower Michigan. Slight risk, enhanced risk right into here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on and just zoom into this, folks. So here we go. Should be a really good graphic for you folks. That at least if your town name isn't on here, which there's a high chance it's not, at least you're close to maybe a well-known town name. So big cities like Kansas City, have that enhanced risk today. Level 3 out of 5. This does include in the orange, Iowa City, Davenport, Burlington, Kirksville, Hannibal, Kansas City, St. Joseph. You guys, enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. Slight risk includes Des Moines in the yellow, down to Columbia, Missouri, Topeka, Emporia, Hutchinson, Manhattan, Great Bend, Pratt. Guys, there is a chance the enhanced risk gets kind of pushed back southwest into Kansas. Whatever storms form in Kansas today, and I'll show you here in a second. I have a separate timestamp up for Kansas, more than likely. They could produce some really high-end winds. Right now, just a slight risk. But then you got the marginal risk in the dark green that includes everybody in that. What is this driven off of? Well, the tornado risk is the highest a little bit further east and north. Kirksville, 5% risk of a tornado. Burlington, 5% risk in the brown area. And then Kansas City, there is that 2% risk. Topeka, 2% risk of a tornado. So 5% in the brown, 2% in the green. And then we look at the severe wind outlook, the red area, 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. Yellow, 15% risk of that. And there's that hatch risk. You see the black outlined area right in here? That is a 10% risk of winds exceeding, make sure this is winds and not hail. Yes, this is winds. I've done that before. 10% risk of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. Whoever gets hit by a storm in Kansas today, and I know I keep mentioning Kansas, but these could be quite intense, guys. But the highest confidence of storm development is, of course, over here. So that's why the percentage is higher over here. So definitely a high-end risk of strong winds. The hail outlook positioned a little bit further east. Red area, 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. I mean, this includes St. Joseph over to Burlington, Kirksville, Iowa City, Davenport. Yellow area, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then look at the black outline region here. That is a 10% risk of significant hail, which does include Topeka, Kansas City. Hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. Okay, now let's move a little bit further east. Chicago, Ann Arbor, Lansing, Kalamazoo, all the way down to Lafayette, Indiana, slight risk. Springfield, slight risk. Rockford, Mayora, slight risk. Peoria, though, enhanced risk. If you live here in western Illinois, and then kind of north central Illinois, level 3 out of 5 risk. So what is this driven off of? Well, tornado risk extends and then goes north all the way up through the lower Michigan region. Gaylord, down to Lansing, Chicago, Rockford, 2% risk of a tornado, but Peoria, a little bit higher risk. And this could tweak a little bit, guys. I'm making this video as of just after 7 a.m. Eastern time, just after 6 a.m. Central time. Next update comes out in about an hour and some change. Okay, so that's the tornado risk for today. Wind outlook. All right, here in the red, 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. The yellow, 15% risk of that. And then the black outline region, which does include Chicago, a 10% risk of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. And then you look at the hail outlook. A red area right in here. Peoria, 30% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. Yellow area, 15% risk of that, Chicago. And then 10% risk, Chicago, Rockford, of hail exceeding Quincy, of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. So that's a severe weather outlook. It's quite significant today. So let's break it down kind of state by state, area by area. Kansas, specifically talking about you guys, I don't think the storms will be widespread in coverage, but whoever gets hit could get hit by some destructive winds. So we'll start it off around 2 p.m. Central Time. Confused about the time frame, look over here. I know it says 3, but this is in Eastern Time, so back it up 1 hour because we're in Central Time, and this is where these storms will occur. Bang, here's those storms developing here. Immediately could hit severe limits. Guys, the temperatures are going to be scalding hot in Kansas today. I mean, it is going to get like to 105, 106 degrees. So when these storms do explode here, if they do, man, there is tons of thermodynamic fuel, tons of high-end cape levels for these storms to take advantage of. So you know these storms are going to pack a punch. And here they are in central Kansas. There's a kind of a small tornado risk with this too. But I know this doesn't look all that worrisome. All right, Topeka right here, Kansas City over here. But whoever gets hit by just these, what they look like little storms, destructive winds are possible with this. And these storms look quite intense. You know, Kansas City to Topeka points west. Hutchinson could get hit by some nasty storms. And watch out Kansas City, I'm telling you. But then, you know, by the time we get to about midnight, they're about done. And you're thinking, well, you know, that didn't look like much at all, Mitch. But look at the predicted, now this is overdone sometimes. Look at the predicted potential wind gusts per the HRRR model with these storms. This is between now and about 1 p.m. All this is for what's going on right now or just general wind gusts. Watch how these storms pop up. Look at those. Look at those wind gusts they're producing. And it even shows it getting all the way into like northwestern Oklahoma, guys. But yeah, look at these storms. Like, look at this, you know, Topeka right in here, Kansas City. I'm not saying you're going to get an 80-mile-per-hour wind gust in either one of those towns and cities, but I'm saying whoever gets these storms today in Kansas, the wind energy's there, and the fuel in the atmosphere is certainly there. 60, 70, 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts are possible with these storms. So please be aware in Kansas, even though you're not maybe in the highest risk area. Head on up the road a little bit. I want to show Wisconsin. Don't want to leave my friends hanging in Wisconsin. You do got the energy kind of surging through now. HRRR model doing all right handling this, but it does show a secondary area of energy getting going. Does the rain you're getting right now in kind of the areas of Wisconsin kind of mess up the atmosphere for these storms later? Let's hope so. But, you know, the HRRR model showed this last night. Around 2 p.m., these storms look quite intense in southern Wisconsin. And note that you only got, let's find it here. I mean, you only got, you got a marginal risk basically in southern Wisconsin. It's a risk of severe weather though, but it just doesn't look that, the Storm Prediction Center is not buying maybe these storms getting going, but these look quite intense in southern Wisconsin. If these storms can get going before the dry air moves in, you guys have a risk of all hazards. But watch out Milwaukee, early afternoon. But then these storms kind of rumble over Lake Michigan, begin to affect Chicago. But I did just want to show Wisconsin because the early to mid-afternoon time frame could be quite intense for you guys. And we will take a look at potential wind gusts with this. And let's actually just look at the latest run. And, you know, it doesn't look that worrisome. It does show like a 60, 50 mile per hour wind gust between Chicago and Milwaukee right in here. So it does show them storms getting going, but you might be lacking ingredients for these storms to truly pack a severe punch. Head on a little bit down the road, down to the Midwest, Missouri, Illinois, areas of surrounding states of those states, if that makes sense. You started off around lunchtime, okay? And you keep this going, you get to about 2, 3. Look at those storms we just talked about up in Wisconsin. These storms starting to ooze down into northern Illinois. Chicago, it shows you getting hit by storms around 3 to 5 p.m. You got this intense storm showing up here in southern Iowa. You keep this going. Look at these storms. And we're going to get a better look at southern Michigan here in a second. But you can see it here on this map. Storms in southwestern Michigan are likely producing damaging winds, gusty winds at minimum. These storms are looking pretty intense still and starting to ooze down into the southern tip of Lake Michigan, into northern Indiana. And then this is where I'm the most concerned about in this area. You see how you kind of got discrete to semi-discrete storms here in southern, southeastern Iowa, northern, just like north of Kirksville, Missouri. This area right in here, this is where you could produce a quick tornado today, this afternoon, into this evening. If they were going to get some tornadoes, it's going to be in this area. And sure enough, this is right where we have that 5% risk, the highest risk of a tornado. But these storms, probably in about a 2 to 3 hour span, will grow up scale, but still produce a tornado risk. Very large hail risk, big time temperatures rising into this area. And listen, I mean, I'm telling you, if you live in this area, southeastern Iowa, western Missouri, western Illinois, northern Missouri, these storms have the capability of producing all hazards. And then these continue to sag south with a boundary sagging south. Watch out Peoria, based off the HRRR model. Central Illinois, these storms look quite intense. Look in northern Missouri. And I know you see this weird gap here, but these storms could very well be attached. In fact, if we kind of look at the latest run here, it only goes out that far. Look at the latest run. Looks like there's a little bit more of an attachment here. It only goes 18 hours out, but shows these storms really forming south of Chicago. But if you look at the latest 06Z, same thing here. So let's not focus too much on the change model guides. But, you know, you start to get to after midnight, these storms could still be rolling through like central to south central Illinois. And then you look at Indianapolis, for example, these storms could be hitting you guys around midnight. But I do think they'll lose some steam. But they could be a little bit more intense than what this model's showing. Updraft velocity swath indicates rotating updrafts in southeastern Iowa, western Illinois, northern Missouri. Okay, I mean, it really pinpoints right where that 5% risk area is. And this indicates rotating updrafts, stronger updrafts. And it certainly shows them with these semi-discrete supercells forming right in here. So if you live in this region right here, the Midwest, you're going to be under the gun for the risk of all hazards and significant hazards also. So be aware of that. And then if you look at the wind gusts between now and the next 24 hours, you see this area right here in like northern Missouri. I mean, that's a wind gust over like 80 to 90 miles per hour. So these storms will pack a punch in regards to damaging winds. Could be a wind-driven hail. You could get over 100 mile per hour wind gusts with this kind of setup. So please be aware. I mean, this could be a little bit further south, a little bit further north, but in general, I mean, I think it shows where the highest risk area is. No, I don't want to start a free trial. I appreciate it though, but it's going to be right into here. Okay, highest risk area. So let's move a little bit further east because I don't want to leave my friends here in lower Michigan hanging. But, you know, this is around 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Look at these storms hitting Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Lansing. You guys are getting hit pretty hard. And these could extend a little bit further north in northern lower Michigan. But I do think the worst will be in the southern half of lower Michigan. But these storms look pretty intense, you know, around 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Then they start to lose some intensity, 7 p.m., and they look like they weaken pretty quickly as they get to Detroit, northern Indiana, northwestern corner of Ohio. And yeah, we'll see what this action does into the overnight hours, but that's what it looks like for that area. And I will kind of show you just a better look. And no, we're not looking at snow. I wish we were. At the winds here. And it does show some pretty intense winds rolling through Michigan up here, and even sections of northern Ohio, northern Indiana. 30, 40, maybe 50 mile per hour wind gusts with some of these storms. So we'll certainly watch. If we talk about the ingredients real quick, we kind of went over this over the last couple of days, but it's a pretty easy ingredient-wise setup to explain. Really, you got dry air sagging south. Dew points in the 50s or lower. It's drier air. Moist air, I would say, is more dew points in the 60s and higher, especially when you get in the 70s. So what you'll notice here is dry air oozing in from the south. We'll get this in motion here. We'll take it to about early afternoon. There's a boundary here. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see it. Dew points in the 50s, more so 40s up here. But then you get south of this boundary, hot, rich, moist air. I mean, downright uncomfortable in southern Ohio. That corn might be sweating in southern Ohio. Southern Iowa, that corn might be sweating in Iowa, making the humidity even worse. I wouldn't be surprised if we see dew points above 75 in southern Iowa today. But Missouri, you can see there's a lot of moist air, and this is, you can check that off the box as far as thermodynamics for severe weather for today. Boy, it's going to be humid. So that's fuel for these storms. They ingest this very warm, moist air. But as soon as that boundary moves in, the severe weather threat's done. So it's done in Milwaukee by the time you get into dinner time. And you can see how the air mass just kind of sags south, and just a little bit more dry air kind of moves in behind it. You combine that, what we call the mid-level jet, and there's a jet maximum basically where the energy is. So you got most of the flow this morning up here in the upper portion of the upper Midwest. But as we continue to move into this afternoon, here's kind of an exit region of the jet right into here, right? So we just showed you the dew points, right? Remember I said southern Iowa, very moist air, Missouri. Well, that moist air is riding right into that mid-level flow. So you got plenty of flow at the southern edge of this mid-level jet. meeting the northern edge of the moist air at the surface, south of that boundary, which is kind of right at the upper portion of this line, Drew. So that is why your severe weather threat will be the highest, probably like right into here. This is the best overlapping ingredients. Up here, too much dry air. Down here, you're lacking kinematics. Kinematics, wind flow aloft, thermodynamics, moisture levels of the surface, Cape levels, surface temperatures, and you'll definitely be able to check that off the box down here. So that's the best overlapping ingredient area right here. So that's the ingredients today. Let's break down the rest of the country real fast for you. So the southeast, you know, really the only story, literally, but I'll show everybody, is South Florida. Could get some storms into the low country of South Carolina this afternoon. You very well could. We'll have to watch. These could get strong to severe. If you're vacationing down near Beaufort, Savannah, Hilton Head, could get some storms early this afternoon. But it's mainly all that storm action you see down in Florida that's going to be the big concern today. And in fact, we'll just go on and jump right to South Florida. Here it is. A lot of tropical moisture in South Florida. I mean, it's going to crank up again by lunchtime. Raining cats and dogs out here. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that term, but we say it, at least in the South. But storms popping up north of this main kind of area of moisture. A lot of storm action in the Bahamas. If you're vacationing there, just been probably a nasty week to vacation. I apologize on behalf of the weather. But storms, kind of isolated storms popping up a little bit further north in Florida where the atmosphere can recover. These could be strong to severe. They could, but more so just tropical in nature. Not really driven, not enough flow in the atmosphere to really get these going, but just a nasty, slow-moving line of storms. It's going to produce a lot of rainfall throughout the late morning, afternoon, evening hours, and then we'll just watch for more pop-up storms that will get going in southern half of Florida for tomorrow morning. So rainfall between now and the next 24 hours for Florida, maybe an inch and a quarter, less than an inch up here in central Florida. Southern Florida, 2, 3, 4 inches of rain added on to what you've already got. I'm interested to see what the final total to some of these areas are in South Florida and kind of how it matched up from the previous thinking before this event started. Northeast today, you know, I think you'll get a little bit of a break from all that shower and storm activity. But we will watch as some energy does surge in from Canada, kind of the energy of what's going on this afternoon in the Great Lakes area in the Midwest. This will eventually move into, as you can tell, it'll move into southern Ontario, areas of Quebec. Could get some storms in this area later on this evening, so be aware of that. But then we get kind of deeper into the evening, into the overnight hours. Some showers will greet you guys up here in northern New York, western New York, northern Vermont, New Hampshire, maybe all the way into Maine. And waking up tomorrow morning to the atmosphere getting primed for some strong and severe storms for your Friday afternoon, evening. In the, I would say, closer to the I-95 corridor of the Northeast. We're not going to speak much on that. We'll talk about that in the next video. But tomorrow will be a day of severe weather for the Northeast. So we'll watch out for that. But over the next 24 hours, I mean, not a whole lot going on besides what moves into the overnight hours. This morning, not a whole lot going on. A little bit of moisture hanging out along the Texas coastline. We'll see if more moisture can get going on today in the form of maybe some sea breeze thunderstorms. Then we watch for those thunderstorms that'll get going in Kansas. Cannot roll out a strong to severe storm in eastern Colorado, panhandle of Texas, Oklahoma. There could be some strong to severe storms this afternoon to this evening, so be aware of that. Watch these cluster of storms around Woodward later this evening, Oklahoma. So, but outside of that, we've already discussed Kansas and Missouri. But, you know, Texas, a quieter day, hot. Unless you live in the panhandle where you do need to just pay attention for that strong and severe storm risk. The rest of the north-central U.S., besides what we already discussed, could get some storms that develops into eastern UP and Michigan before that cooler, dry air moves in. So if you live in the eastern UP, some storms are possible to likely this afternoon. And also in northern lower Michigan, you could get an isolated spin up in northern lower Michigan because you are closer to that surface low. But you are lacking, you have a very small window to produce some storms up here before the atmosphere kind of clears. And then we get into this evening, maybe some isolated showers or storms dancing around the UP and Michigan and Wisconsin state line. And then we get into the overnight hours and just a cooler early summer air mass kind of moves in, but it won't stay cool for long. Western U.S., and we need to back it up here. We're already in Friday morning. So this morning, not a whole lot going on. A little bit of a moist flow. Could get some showers maybe in Phoenix, Arizona. Very well could. This cutoff low starts to move, so you'll get a little bit of a return flow for some moisture in Arizona. Some showers are possible, maybe a storm. A little bit of moisture kind of gets going under this ridge, and then waking up tomorrow morning with this cutoff low, but you can't really see it, but it's over the western U.S., and this is bringing some moisture into the central and southern Rockies, and then this will set the stage for some strong to severe storms across the central high plains for tomorrow. But today, guys, it's not a whole lot going on out there. Temperatures, typical early summer, late spring type stuff, whatever season you want to call it. I'm going to call it summer because it makes it closer to fall, but a lot of people get mad about that and say, Mitch, it's still spring, it's still spring. Okay. But the Northeast, 70s, some low 80s, and then there's some areas that won't get out the 60s. A very pleasant day up here ahead of a stormy day tomorrow. 80s and 90s across the Southeast. Pleasant in the north central U.S., but we're going to jump this downright miserably hot in Kansas and northern Missouri and southern Iowa into western Illinois. Guys, the humidity will mix with these temperatures, and it'll be the heat indices will be, over 110 probably in certain areas. Western U.S. in general, pretty warm, but not extremely hot like we've seen over the last couple of days, but pretty pleasant. We'll give you an update on the tropics, guys. And remember, they do it. What's going to stink about, and I thought about this earlier today, what's going to stink about doing updates from the National Hurricane Center is they're always going to drop another update about 15 minutes after I'm done with this video. So it just is what it is. But right now, and I'm always going to predict what they're going to do on the outlook. Right now, this is at a 20% chance to develop. Invest 90L, which is moving off the eastern coastline of Florida, off the coast of the Southeast. They could bump this to a 30, but I'm going to say they keep it at a 20% the 8 a.m. update. But there's still an outside chance it develops into a tropical depression. This now has been bumped up to an orange. I call it code orange, was what we say in the weather community, little orange emoji. But there's a 40% chance now for this to develop into a tropical cyclone within the next 7 days. And I think that they might bump this up to a 50% chance sometime today. It could be on the next outlook here in the next hour or so. It might not be. And they drop the next outlook actually in about like 15 to 20 minutes. But they might bump this up to a 50% chance. It doesn't change anything. Confidence is getting on up there to something's going to develop. And speaking of something developing, let's take a look at the GFS. We'll start 48 hours out. There's whatever a low could potentially form out in the western North Atlantic off the coast of the eastern U.S. is what I was trying to say. Could outside chance get a named storm out of this? If we do, that'll take Alberto, but I'm starting to think that's not going to happen. Your eyes really go down here in Central America, areas of the Caribbean, Pacific side of Central America, and we just get a lot of moisture, huge broad area rotation, what we call the CAG, Central American Gyrum, which is basically, like I said, just a huge broad area of moisture rotation. And we start to get into Sunday. There's a couple things going on. There's a little low coming here. There's something going on down here. Just a lot of moisture. Okay, look at this low that pops up Monday morning here in the Western Caribbean. Will that develop? And then you got what I think has a high confidence of developing here in the Bay of Campeche. I never messed it up. Bay of Campeche. Just stick with the original, Mitch. A sub 1,000 millibar low tucked here in the Bay Area. This is probably going to be sneaky and try to develop into a named storm, which would be a tropical storm. Alberto, could be Beryl, something off the coast of the Southeast develops, and then probably dance around down here, and then ultimately probably make landfall in Mexico, but could bring a lot of moisture further north. But this turns into a complex situation. I think there's multiple pieces of energy out there. For example, it pops off another low pressure right here, and this could be what comes out the Western Pacific. And then confidence is starting to increase somewhat that something's going to develop deep down here in the southwestern Caribbean. This could develop, and then this kind of gets into the same area. So I think that we're going to have a lot to talk about as far as the tropics as we get deeper into June. Okay, but the main thing is watching what develops off this Central American gyrum in the Bay of Campeche. Okay, but you look at the European, same thing. This heads on out. If it develops, it develops. If not, and I don't think it's going to bother anybody. But then we get into Sunday. A lot of broad spin out here, huge area of spin. Look at all that moisture getting all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of moisture into Western Caribbean too. And then we get into Monday evening, starts pushing a lot of tropical moisture in Louisiana and Texas. And then it pops that L right here, develops something. Okay. Tuesday morning, is that Tropical Storm Alberto? We'll have to see. Get sub 1,000 millibar low pressure. To me, once you start to see that sub 1,000 millibar pressure, that means that, okay, this might be a weaker end tropical storm. Might not, might be. We've seen tropical storms have an above 1,000 millibar low pressure. But anyways, let's not focus too much on that. But same thing. One thing I'll note, guys, this isn't going to be some tucked-in tropical storm if it develops. This will be a huge moisture bubble because it will have what we call an anticyclonic flow over this thing. So this thing will be ventilating well, have a lot of moisture for a pretty large area. Just a huge, I think there's just going to be a lot of moisture in the Gulf of Mexico, the Bay of Campeche next week for sure. And then this does its thing, makes landfall. Then the Euro's saying, hey, I'm going to develop some other low pressure. It looks like it almost takes whatever energy originally forms, kind of pulls it back over water. And then all of a sudden, we're kind of left right at the end. Takes us all the way to next weekend. We got some sort of low in the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico in the final frame of the Euro. So we just need to watch this, guys. And if you look at the European ensemble, makes up 21 members, and it's going to throw it all on the screen for you. So it's going to show a lot of numbers. But just look at this as a general viewer, as you guys are the audience. The more vibrant these colors get, maybe the higher chance of stronger a low pressure, and just more members that show up, the more colors you're going to see here. So you see all these members, 97, 94, 92. The more you see kind of like this 01, that's 1001. That 97, that stands for 997 millibar low. So remember, the lower number you get, the stronger the system. But there's a strong signal as we're getting into early next week. Getting to midway next week, the signal increases even more. I mean, look at this. So the model guidance is definitely zooming in on this. It really likes the idea. But what makes me intrigued is you got some members up here too. Is that a totally different system? But in general, pretty heightened signal for this. And the last thing we'll look at, chances of a tropical storm developing are increasing. Now you got a 50 to 60% chance down here in the Bay of Campeche. So the tropics are certainly heating up. Nothing ridiculously concerning, but it's just a sign of what's to come potentially. So certainly a chance of a tropical storm developing down here. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day.